While on the other hand, Abel saw mercy and justice in the way God had treated Adam and Eve. He realized that had it not been for God's mercy, my parents would have died because of the gravity of the sin they committed. When he came to worship God, it was a fulfillment of the gratitude that was existing in his heart to say thank you to God for how he had dealt with him and his parents. So he followed every detail that God had given them of how to worship. He set up an altar, and Cain as well set up an altar. But Cain brought the products of his hands, the fruits and vegetables, while Abel brought a lamb in accordance with the direction of God. As they waited, fire came from heaven and devoured the sacrifice on Abel's altar. And nothing happened on the side of Cain. And he was very angry. Why would God not respect the effort I've put in? And the Lord asked him, why are you angry? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? It is that simple. But Cain did not say anything. Up to this point, he had obeyed God in every detail of how he should be worshipped. But he didn't see any point of bringing a lamb, which was the most important part of this sacrifice, because it represented Christ. This is how God was going to deal with people through the grace of Christ. And the lamb symbolized Christ, who was going to die on the cross for you and I. When this happened, Cain decided to kill his brother Abel. Not for any reason, but the sole reason that God had shown favor toward his young brother. And his young brother had tried to reason with him to bring him back to the true worship of God. But he wasn't happy. He wanted God to accept his sacrifice, despite what God had told him to do. Why is this important? Because this is played in our lives every day we make choices. Are we making choices because we think what we think is more important than what God thinks? I don't know if I said that correctly. Our thinking process is very valuable to us, but it can come in the way of us worshiping God. Sometimes we think that God should accept our righteousness, but he's not going to do that. Human righteousness is tainted with selfishness. At our best, we are still sinners. The righteousness that God requires of us is the righteousness of Christ. One of my favorite writers said that walking with God, everything, like on that day, you cannot bring your righteousness. Let me rephrase this. God renews his mercies every day. He does not expect us to accrue our righteousness from 20 years ago, and bring them to the day, and then we present them before God so that we may have favor in his eyes. It's like nothing has happened. Every day of your life, it's like nothing has happened. Do you get what I mean? Because the righteousness is not our righteousness that God accepts. It's the righteousness of Christ, which is renewed every morning. His mercies are new every morning. But people want to bring their experience, their work that they have done, and present it before God. Maybe you have preached before. Maybe you have sung for God before. God is not saying that that's bad, but it should not be a basis of our acceptance before God. I don't know if you get my train of thought. This is exactly what Cain was implying to God. I've worked hard. It's not like these vegetables just came up by themselves. I've put effort into this. Why are you not accepting the fruits of my hands? That was the problem with the Pharisees in the time of Christ. They did not want to do things the way God wanted it to be done. They wanted to do things their own way. And Christ said, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees, you cannot inherit the kingdom of God. And their righteousness was such that they would return tithe to the last onion in their garden. They would not carry the handkerchief on Sabbath. But Christ is saying that outward show of righteousness is not what God is looking for. What is it that God is looking for in us? Now, if we go back one slide, the Lord said, I'm not going to look at the financial side of things as far as, how rich you are, or how good looking, whether you're tall and handsome and well built. That is not what I'm looking for in my servants. The Lord said, I've built with my hands. I've made Orion. I've made galaxies. I've made stars that are many times bigger than the sun. But these things don't give me the joy that I get when I see a man who is humble, contrite in heart, and trembles at my word. This is what the God of heaven is saying. He's made marvelous things. While the scientists and the astronauts are looking for worlds that, they can inhabit, the Lord of heaven is looking for a heart where his spirit can reside. And this heart will be so humble that it will depend or rely on God totally. I don't know if the perspective is working. The Lord of the heavens and the earth is saying, all these things I've created, they are beautiful in their own way. But there's this one thing that is beautiful, a heart that is humble, a heart that is teachable. This is what I'm after. So this badge of humility will be carried by every Christian wherever they go. But this badge of humility was displayed 100% in the person of Christ. Even though he was God, he submitted himself 100% to his Father. When the going went tough, he said, Lord, if there is a way, any way, I can avoid this cup, please, Father. But he ended his prayer by saying, nevertheless, I will not tell you what to do. Your will be done. He was God. He had ideas probably of how to solve this problem, but still, he said, my thinking is not important. The way I'm seeing things right now is beside the point. What I'm after right now is your will. Because you're the all-knowing God. He set an example for us. How much more we who are accustomed to sin? How much should we rely on God? Humility is key. But the challenge is pride, on the other hand, which made the devil which made Lucifer into a demon, is still prevalent in the children of God. The church of Laodicea says we are in need of nothing. We are rich and increased in goods. But Christ is saying, you are naked, blind, and miserable. Come to me and buy gold tried in fire. I saw that you may see. And I'll give you white garments that you may cover your nakedness. But pride is so stubborn, it fights with God. It fights with God. It says, no, I don't have a problem. The problem is out there with other religions. The problem is not here. But Christ is yearning and entreating us. Please, give up your pride. Be humble. How do we get this humility? This humility is nothing that is of any earthly sort. We cannot get it on earth. It is only through the Spirit of God. When we allow Him to come and reside in our hearts, then and only then can He give us this gift. And Christ said, pray to God that He may give you the Spirit of God, that He may help you. How many of us are praying for the Spirit? Christ tried to emphasize that unless you're born of the Spirit, there is no chance. You stand no chance. Now there was a man called Abraham. This man started off really badly. When he was told by God to come out of his own country, his kindred and his family, to leave his family behind and start a new religion, he had a problem. The problem is he did not have a child. And time was not on his side. He was growing old. You know how it is like when God is quiet and you're not in sync with His timing? You think He's taking forever to answer your prayers. Abraham thought, maybe I could find some shortcuts here to quicken this process. We can rig the system. And God wasn't happy with that. But God did not give up on him. He was still work in progress. And there was a time when he lied and said, Sarah is my sister. God had to intervene to stop these Egyptian kings from taking Sarah because of her beauty. That was a rebuke to Abraham. But when God was working with him with all these experiences, he came to a point where God was saying about Abraham, Abraham obeyed my commandments. He obeyed my ways, my statutes, and my voice. But it didn't happen overnight. I don't know where you are on this journey. But it is not for us to judge each other. If we had to make a vote when Abraham sinned against God, we would have condemned him. He's not suitable. But God knew what he was doing. He knew Abraham's heart. After God was finished with him, Abraham became so great. Not only did he worship God, but he made sure that everywhere he went, he would erect an altar of God. That was his life now, a life of prayer. If he moved from one place to another, you would know that Abraham was there because there was an altar where he'd worship the Lord in the morning and in the evening. That's how his life was structured, around prayer. To the point that even his relationship with fellow men was that strong. You know, when he went out of his country, he went out with Lot, his nephew. But instead of taking advantage of Lot, making him look after his flock, he helped Lot to become so wealthy that Lot's wealth was competing with Abraham's wealth. That's how he related to his nephew. I don't know what it is like with you. He had the opportunity of abusing Lot, taking advantage of him. You know, Lot would do all his work while he just sits. But he said, I will develop Lot into someone. Then he said to Lot, our servants are fighting over grazing land. We are family. We should not argue. This is how Abraham's thinking process went. You and I are family. We should not argue. Look, is the land not before you? You can go to the right, I'll go to the left. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. But Lot did not realize that the blessings that he had were coming because of Abraham. He didn't realize that. Instead of saying, it's your choice to Abraham, he saw the land over the Jordan was so good to look at. And he decided to set camp, his tent, near Sodom. You know, this is humility on the part of Abraham. He knew that God would bless him whether he went to the right or to the left. It didn't matter. But when we have a choice, when we're dealing with fellow brethren, what do? We want the best, don't we? And leave the West with them. This is the human heart. But it shouldn't be like that. As Christians, we know that it does not matter where God puts us. If he wants to bless us, he will bless us anyway. God is not limited. He can turn a desert into a garden if he chooses. Water from a stone, that's God. That was how strong Abraham's faith was. Then came the test where he had to sacrifice his son. You know, Isaac's faith is overshadowed by his father in this instance. But that young man had so much faith at that tender age. He was stronger than his father because his father was of advanced age. He could have fought his father and broken free. But Isaac was told that the Lord is the giver of life. And in this case, the Lord had chosen Isaac to be the sacrifice. And he also reasoned that if I came by a miracle, and God is saying I have to die, my father, let it be. This young man, I don't know how old he was, maybe 16. Don't quote me on that. But all I'm saying to our young members in this church, God can use you only if you acknowledge Him as your creator. He can work with any age. Jeremiah was young when he was called. Christ started his ministry at 12. This is the challenge to our young church members today. The Lord is looking for people like you. The young Jeremiahs, the young Daniels of this church. Where are you? The Marys, the Elizabeths. Then we know the story. Lot became entangled in Sodom and Gomorrah. Then the angel of the Lord came to destroy these two cities. But he said, I will not destroy these cities until I've spoken to my servant Abraham. Now when the news of destruction of these two cities came to Abraham, Abraham thought to himself, what will happen to my nephew? And he started negotiating with God. He said, Lord, I am only human. I cannot tell you what to do. But Lord, be it far from you that you destroy the wicked together with the righteous. And the Lord said, if that, I will not destroy the righteous together with the wicked. What if they're 50? And they start bargaining. But they couldn't find people in Sodom and Gomorrah who were righteous. This is the heart of Abraham. He's thinking about his nephew all this time. He's praying to God, God save him. Even though he's made a mistake, he set up camp with these uncircumcised people. You know, Abraham could have said, I warned you, Lord, not to associate with these people. Now see what's happening to you. He reasoned with God. God, save Lot. Save Lot. Save Lot. And his answer was heard. Do we find joy when our fellow brethren falls? And gossip? Make, all these comments? What manner of spirit is that? That's not from God. That is not the Spirit of God. We should be agonizing in prayer and saying, Lord, help my brother, help my sister. And the Spirit of God will find residence in this church. And the Spirit of God will find residence in your house. You can't backbite your own husband to your family, your own wife, and expect God and the angels to be happy in your house. Humility. Abraham is a good example. He worshiped God and he was a friend of man. This is the law and the prophets. Thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Who doesn't want what happened to Lot? To be promoted to a high level, the level of the patriarch of God. But Abraham made a choice. Like we all have choices to hate each other, to love each other. We all have choices. Every day we practice the power of choice. It has been given to us by God. He is not going to interfere with that. Then we look at a man. Oh, sorry. Called Job. Now, Job had medical issues that just came from nowhere. And he lost everything he had ever worked for. He had invested in property, he had invested in livestock. In one day, everything was wiped out. And not only that, his children were killed. Now, on a stress scale, now if you lose your job and one family member dies, you are in great danger of depression. But he did not only lose his job, he lost his family and all the servants. Everything he's ever worked for in his life was gone. And not only that, he was a worshiper of God. How can this happen to me? But the Lord knew that this trial would come to Job and it will strengthen him instead of destroy him. It was clear in his mind that everything he had was given to him by God. So he said, the Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. To him, material things didn't matter. All that mattered was his faith. He said, even though God slays me, yet will I trust him. His faith was that strong that God could even brag before the devil and say, have you considered my servant Job? And the devil said, you pay him well. You are buying his loyalty, you are buying his faith. But the Lord said, no, take everything he has and see what happens. Even the wife came to him and said, now is the time to curse God and die. This is way beyond normal. Even his wife deserted him in the time he needed her most. The devil threw everything he could at him. And he had no idea what was happening. That's the beauty about faith. You don't have to understand anything that's happening around you. That's the beauty about faith. You just say, the Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. Go away, Satan. I know my Redeemer lives. I don't know what the situation is like. Whether it's a medical issue. There are people who've walked the road you are walking right now. You are not alone. But the Lord will see you through. And at one time he said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. Paul was saying, Lord, take away this thorn in my flesh. And then I'll be happy. But the Lord said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. It is only when we hit rock bottom that God comes to us and says, yes, now you can rely on me 100%. The lesson has worked. I've been there before. When you just feel like throwing the towel and say, that's it, I'm done. But the Lord knows that these trials are not there to destroy you. He's going to bring out a very good spiritual jewel out of you. Beautiful Christians don't just happen. They have to go through these experiences and come out the other way, refined and purified. Now, to conclude, there's this man called David. Now, David did terrible things. So terrible that God was not happy. He decided to punish him. He took someone's wife and killed the husband. And the Lord said, because you've done this, Absalom, your son, is going to hunt you down like an animal. But I will restore you back to your throne. And David said, yes, Lord, I understand. I've done a bad thing, and I deserve to be punished. This is David. His master has spoken, and his servant has to listen. But at the end of it all, David saw that the grace of God and what he has done, these two are not stacking up. The Lord keeps blessing him. Then he said to God, what can I do for you? Can I build you a house? And God said, no, you will not build me a house. Your hands are dripping with blood. But what I will do, because you've been such a good man, the scepter shall not depart from between your feet. Your sons shall be kings, and I will make a covenant with you. Then David said in the book of Psalms, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Not only has he taken me from following the sheep, he has given me a name that will last forever. As if that was not enough, God is blessing me every single day of my life. I should have been dead because of the sins that I've committed, but the Lord has forgiven me. Here I am, Lord. I shall not want as long as you're my shepherd. And then he makes a vow at the end of it all. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And he makes a vow, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. May the Lord bless the reading of his word.